They mocked the housekeeper's accent during the hearing until she presented a court order she had written herself. People only listened when her broom was silent. And even then, it wasn't to her voice but to their own discomfort echoing off the marble floors she had just polished. Marisol Cruz had spent 20 years pushing carts filled with towels and mops through the corridors of the Fairview District Courthouse. Every day she wore the same faded uniform, spoke in a soft Dominican-accented English, and answered every question with a gentle yes ma'am or yes sir, even when the tone thrown her way dripped with disdain. No one asked where she came from. No one asked what she studied back in Santo Domingo before leaving for the States. No one knew she held 2 degrees and was fluent in 3 languages. All they saw was the woman with the mop who moved like a shadow between hearings, trials, and late-night document dumps. And today, they laughed at her. Not behind her back, but in the courtroom. It started when the microphone crackled during the recess of a heated civil trial involving a major land development corporation accused of fraudulent seizures in minority neighborhoods. The plaintiff's lawyer had stepped out. Marisol had entered, broom in hand, to sweep some spilled coffee near the witness stand. The courtroom was half full, mostly junior attorneys, interns, and court aides. One of the interns, a lanky white guy in a navy blue suit 3 sizes too big, turned to his friend and whispered, "Should we be worried she's going to rewrite the legal code with her mop?" His friend smirked. "Only if we need it translated first." A few snorts followed. Then, as if mocking a sacred ritual, the first intern cleared his throat and mimicked, in a crude Spanish accent, "Excuse me, Señor Judge, I bring the broom of justice." The laughter erupted. Marisol paused. She stood up straight. For a second, the room went quiet, thinking she might leave in embarrassment. But she didn't move. She reached into her cleaning cart, pulled out a sealed manila envelope, walked to the front of the courtroom, and placed it carefully on the clerk's desk. "This is for Judge Pennington," she said, clearly, her voice steady and unwavering. The intern raised his brows. "What, your resignation letter?" Marisol looked at him. Not with anger. Not with shame. But with something far colder. Pity. "No," she replied. "A court order. Written by me." Silence. Thick, paralyzing silence. The bailiff, unsure, picked up the envelope and flipped it over. The seal bore the stamp of the Superior Court. Legitimate. Inside, typed on formal letterhead, was a carefully formatted, legally sound draft for a temporary injunction against the very Land Development Corporation on trial. The room stirred. Someone stood. Someone else whispered. The intern's smirk fell. Judge Pennington returned minutes later. The bailiff handed him the envelope. "Who submitted this?" the judge asked. Marisol didn't answer. She just resumed sweeping the floor near the jury box. The judge scanned the document. Then paused. "Who," he repeated, louder this time, "submitted this?" The bailiff nodded toward Marisol. "The cleaning lady, Your Honor." A beat. Then the judge turned to her. "Ms. Cruz?" She stopped again, leaned on her broom, and nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "You wrote this?" "Yes." "Where did you get the case files?" "They were left unattended. I read them while cleaning." "And you understand what you've written here?" "I do." "You understand this is a formal legal injunction?" "Yes." "On what basis do you draft this?" Marisol slowly walked forward. "On the basis that I have a law degree from the Autonomous University of Santo Domingo. I completed a master's in international human rights law from Columbia University before immigration complications forced me out of the program and into undocumented status for 12 years. I now have citizenship, but no one would hire me to practice. So I clean courtrooms." The room was dead silent. The intern who had mocked her tried to shrink behind the benches. Judge Pennington sat back in his chair, the draft still in his hands. "This is impeccably written." "I know," she replied softly. He turned to his clerk. "File it. Mark it as received. We will review its merits before resuming proceedings." And just like that, the janitor's voice had entered the record. Word spread quickly. By lunchtime, every floor in the courthouse buzzed. The news outlets caught wind of the incident and scrambled for statements. But Marisol refused all interviews. "I'm not a story," she said to the one reporter who caught her during a smoke break outside the courthouse. "The injustice is the story. I'm just tired of being invisible." That night, Judge Pennington called an emergency judicial review. Marisol was invited to sit in as an observer. But not everyone was pleased. In the parking lot, the same intern and a few other legal aides cornered her as she walked to her car. "So now you're a hero," one sneered. "You think one paper makes you better than the rest of us?" Marisol didn't flinch. She opened her car door, placed her cleaning gloves inside, and looked back at them. "I don't think I'm better. I think I'm qualified. The difference is, I didn't need to belittle someone else to prove it." They didn't have a comeback. Inside the courthouse, the judicial panel voted unanimously to consider Marisol's injunction as part of the official trial. By the end of the week, the corporation's legal team filed a motion to have the document dismissed on the grounds that it was not submitted by a licensed attorney. But the presiding judge overruled. "The content of the document," he stated firmly, "is more legally sound than half the motions I've read this month. Its origin does not invalidate its argument." For the first time in over 2 decades, Marisol Cruz sat in the gallery not as a ghost in uniform but as a voice in the room. She wore a plain blue dress. No makeup. No fanfare. She watched as the court examined the injunction line by line. She watched as her words were debated, cited, and finally voted into effect. The injunction passed. It stopped the development plan. It protected hundreds of homes. And it all began because someone thought her voice was worth mocking. Marisol didn't celebrate. She returned to work the next day, mop in hand. When asked why, she simply said, "Justice is not a job you quit. It's a place you clean every day." The next few days inside the courthouse felt like a shift in gravity. Marisol still moved quietly, still pushed her cart, but people began to step aside for her. Not out of politeness that would have been too radical a change but out of something more primitive, uncertainty. The kind of uncertainty people feel when the box they put you in no longer fits. There were whispers in the break rooms. "Did you hear what she did? Apparently she wrote the whole thing herself. She has a degree? From Columbia? Why the hell is she still cleaning floors?" Those who laughed hardest now avoided eye contact. The same people who once made snide remarks about her accent now held their tongues when she passed. The same interns who used to joke about her sweeping now made sure their paperwork wasn't left unattended. But not everyone was silent. Clerk Patel, a meticulous woman known for her tight bun and tighter schedules, approached Marisol late one evening in the hallway. "Your draft," she said, almost reluctantly, was impressive." Marisol looked up, expecting a backhanded compliment. But Patel's face was serious. "I reviewed it 3 times, the clerk continued. "You didn't just understand the law, you challenged it where it needed to be challenged. You anticipated their arguments before they were made. Why aren't you practicing?" Marisol paused. "No firm would take me. My resume had gaps. My name didn't open doors. And my accent closed them." Patel frowned. "That's unacceptable." Marisol gave a tired smile. "It's reality." But something in Patel's face shifted. A flicker of resolve. "Maybe not anymore." The next morning, a letter arrived for Marisol. Hand-delivered. Stamped with the seal of the bar admissions office. She stared at it for minutes before opening it. It was a formal invitation to submit updated credentials and proof of legal education for expedited review. Someone, perhaps Patel, perhaps Judge Pennington, had pulled strings. Marisol didn't cry. She didn't leap. She simply folded the letter and placed it in her cleaning cart, beneath the rags and gloves, next to the worn copy of the U.S. Constitution she carried with her. That day, as she scrubbed the floor near courtroom 3, a reporter snapped a photo of her kneeling with her back to the camera, the letter poking out of the cart beside her. By that evening, the photo had gone viral. The housekeeper who cleaned up the courtroom with the law. Justice has an accent. From mop to motion, the quiet power of Marisol Cruz. The headlines rolled in. Talk shows reached out. Offers to speak at universities, even a podcast deal. Marisol refused most of them. This isn't about fame, she told one host bluntly during a call. This is about the system failing until someone invisible fixed it. But the real storm had only begun. The corporation her injunction halted westward equity development was not pleased. In fact, they were furious. The freeze cost them millions. Their legal team filed countersuits, subpoenas, complaints. They tried to dig into her past, hoping to find anything that could discredit her. An unpaid tax, an overstayed visa, a technicality. But Marisol had lived her life like she cleaned, meticulously. They found nothing. So they changed tactics. One morning, Marisol's apartment door had a red sticker on it. Violation. Code 14. Noise complaints, unregistered tenants, trash disposal issues. All false. Then came the letters. Notices of fines, overdue water bills she'd already paid, parking violations for a car she didn't own. She brought the evidence to court: receipts, records, time-stamped photos, and each time, the fines were waived. But it was clear. They were trying to wear her down. You can stop this, a corporate rep told her outside the courthouse one day. A young man in a slick suit, smile like a blade. Walk away. Get your license. Build a future. No one needs to get messy. Marisol stared at him. Messy? He smiled wider. It's a lot, isn't it? You've had your moment. People will forget. But you keep poking, and they'll remember in the wrong way. You don't want to be a symbol, do you? No, she said. I want to be a lawyer. Then stop playing hero. I'm not. Then what are you? She stepped closer. A woman with a broom and a law degree. One of those will clean the floor. The other will clean the record. And she walked away. But that night, her tires were slashed. Her landlord received an anonymous complaint accusing her of criminal activity. Her mail was tampered with. The intimidation was real. Judge Pennington called her into chambers privately. You can file for a restraining order, he told her. You can go public. No, she said. That's what they want. To make me the story again. I'll stay in the courtroom. And I'll keep sweeping. He nodded. And when you're licensed? I won't stop sweeping. I'll just be doing it in heels. That made him laugh. But the pressure didn't stop. It turned out Westward Equity had deeper ties to the judicial system than anyone realized. Donations, golf weekends, political favors. And someone wanted Marisol discredited, not just silenced. 2 weeks later, during a minor trial, a forged document appeared on Record 1 with Marisol's name typed as author. It contained incorrect legal references and poorly written sections. The aim was obvious, to embarrass her. But Judge Pennington saw through it. So did Clerk Patel. Together, they initiated an internal investigation. And what they uncovered was explosive. Not only had the document been planted by a legal aid tied to Westward's defense team, but internal memos revealed coordinated efforts to discredit Marisol across multiple agencies. It was systemic, ugly, and now undeniable. The judge recused himself from Westward's main case not because of bias toward Marisol, but because he now had to testify as a witness in the investigation. Marisol was offered protection. The DOJ took interest. A task force was formed. Suddenly, she wasn't just a former housekeeper with a court order. She was a witness. A whistleblower. A hero. But through it all, she remained grounded. She still arrived at 6 a.m. Still wore her old shoes. Still swept the halls. Until one morning, Clerk Patel handed her a manila envelope. This one bore a different seal. Bar Association. Inside, her certification to practice law. Full recognition. Licensed. Official. The hallway buzzed with quiet congratulations. Even the bailiff clapped. Someone brought cupcakes. But Marisol did not cheer. Instead, she walked into courtroom 3, broom in one hand, license in the other, and leaned both against the bench. The judge, a new face by then, looked up. "Can I help you?" "Yes," she said. "I'd like to file a motion." He blinked. "Are you the cleaner?" "No," she replied, calm and clear. "I'm the attorney." And this time, no one laughed. The trial that followed became one of the most watched legal events in the state's history. Not because it involved death or money, but because it involved something most people ignored until it screamed. Injustice disguised as routine. Racism wrapped in professionalism. Silence used as a weapon. Marisol took her seat at the plaintiff's table. No longer a silent observer with a mop, but now the lead attorney in a class action suit brought by a coalition of courthouse workers and low-income residents whose voices had been systemically ignored, delayed, or denied for years. The defendants? Westward Equity, a few high-level bureaucrats, and the city office that enabled it all. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, activists, students. Former janitors sat beside professors. Immigrants clutched each other's hands. No one expected her to win. Not really. Not against all that. But Marisol wasn't there to win. She was there to reveal. In her opening statement, she didn't rage. She didn't cry. She simply said, "When I first came to this building, I thought if I worked hard, people would see me. They didn't. So I learned the law. Not to impress anyone. Just to protect myself. And now, I use it to protect others like me, the ones you walk past every day, the ones who clean up after your arguments, the ones who speak with accents that make you uncomfortable. This courtroom belongs to them too." The defense scoffed. They tried to play the intimidation game again. Filed motions to dismiss, questioned her credentials, even submitted requests to bar her from speaking due to bias. The judge, now Justice Daniels, a fair but stern woman known for her ethics, denied every one. The case unfolded like an autopsy. Cold. Methodical. Painful. Emails, memos, surveillance footage. Whistleblowers came forward. Marisol didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. She let the evidence speak. She was careful with every word, knowing each was a mirror reflecting either the truth or the same old lies. Halfway through, the courtroom audience started changing. More minorities appeared. More staff came during their lunch breaks. Even attorneys who had once mocked her began nodding when she spoke. She wasn't just fighting back. She was teaching. And in that room, justice stopped being about the verdict. It became a shared act of recognition. On the final day, Westward's legal team tried a desperate move. They called a surprise witness, a former colleague of Marisol's from her brief stint at a nonprofit, who claimed she once exaggerated her role in a memo. But the cross-examination revealed the truth. The witness had been offered a job with a Westward subsidiary in exchange for her testimony. The courtroom gasped. By then, it was over. The jury took less than a day. Verdict, in favor of the plaintiffs. Damages awarded. Structural review ordered. 3 officials placed on administrative leave. Westward fined, barred from public-private development contracts for 5 years. But more than all that the ruling cited Marisol's own court order, the one she'd written before she was ever licensed, as the turning point in the case. When it ended, Marisol stood outside the courthouse steps in the rain. A reporter ran up to her. "What are you going to do now?" She smiled gently. "Rest. Then start again." A pause. "Do you still clean?" Marisol looked down at her shoes. "The same ones. Worn but whole." "I clean the law now," she said. "And it's messier than you think." She walked away, umbrella closed, the rain soaking her hair. Months later, her name was whispered in the halls of law schools. A symbol. A case study. A warning. A promise. She declined offers to write books, star in documentaries, or run for office. But she did one thing that surprised everyone. She went back to cleaning once a week voluntarily. Not because she had to. Because she wanted the next girl in that hallway to see that you can carry a mop and the law at the same time. That dignity is not in the title you wear but in the truth you live. The final image of her that lived in public memory was not on a podium, not in a suit, not shaking hands with senators. It was of her in a dusty courtroom corridor, one hand pushing a broom, the other handing a young intern a pocket copy of the Constitution. No one mocked her accent anymore. Now, they listened. And maybe, just maybe, they learned.